Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
Well, we're
Tiger,
not online yet.
Tiger King reference.
I know. Oh, there we go. Here we go. I think the stream is starting.
Are we online now?
Almost. There we go. It says live. I think we're live.
We are live.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Nick Merzetti.
Hey,
And my
guys.
cup of tea.
Yeah, this is.
You're my cup of tea.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like the most exciting thing that has happened this week. Great.
It doesn't take much. I caught you on a good week, where you didn't have a jam-packed, busy schedule.
Yeah.
I get a thing here that says, can't hear either of you. I don't know why that is. And then I got another thing saying, never mind. So everything is great. All right, so we've got a ton to talk about. I've been promoting this on my own channel too because I knew what was coming up. I knew what we were going to discuss, and I knew how much information we're going to cover. So without delay, I think we should get into it. And to give a sense of what we're going to talk about today, you have a wealth of experience in the fashion industry. You're also a food photographer as well. You do a lot of work with restaurants here in Toronto. But in your fashion work, you've traveled around the world a lot with it. You've been, published in multiple places. And I think fashion, especially in the age of social media and influencers and this idea of portraits and fashion and everything looking really good, I think it's a thing that's on a lot of people's minds, a lot of interest from budding photographers about, and maybe even people who are on the periphery of that. So it might be stylists or designers, people like that. There's just a growing interest in fashion. And I think that you're one of the best voices to be able to talk us through what goes on behind the scenes and how to develop a career in fashion.
Yeah.
And I think, the things that over time I've learned from you actually blew my mind. I had no idea that things worked the way they did. And I think that's what I want the viewers out here to really see as well, kind of what goes on behind the scenes. So give us a sense first of, as I always like to do, of your background, sort of how you got into both photography and into fashion photography, and sort of how you got to where you are, at least today.
You're a great interviewer, Dale. That's great. Okay. Yeah.
I talk a lot.
Yeah, it's perfect. I didn't really know I wanted to be a photographer until I was like 26. I was really late to the game. Traveling, my uncles borrowed my camera, and the next thing I knew, I fell in love. I felt I had a voice, so I was kind of totally taken by surprise. Never had an idea that that's what I would be into, and I just treated it as a hobby for a while. Didn't think I could ever thinking I could make a career in photography seemed like just some fantastic dream. That would never come to pass. And then one day I met this wonderful girl, Georgia Esperales. I was a +1 at a fashion show. And my friend who had a +1 didn't actually have a +1. So I was wandering around with my camera. She's like, hey, you have a camera, come in the pit, the end of the photography pit. And then I made friends with her. And the next thing I knew, I was, working at Toronto Men's Fashion Week. And yeah, it all starts from there. Are you showing these photos?
I was, and then you stopped talking, so
Okay.
Now I got to talk.
You can go to the folder about how I got my start.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay.
I'm going to just take us there. That's one of your campaigns. Let's go to this folder. Here we go. Let's talk about these things. There we go. I'm just going to start with this one. Here we go.
Yeah. Club photography. The reason I can't hear anything anymore. I think a lot of photographers get their start in club photography. It's a good way to make connections. So that's Nelly, actually. That was interesting. Yeah, just trying to make it artful. So I made a bit of my name. LeBron James, manager. There's a really silly photo here. Not a good photo. There's LeBron in the back with all his friends around him. When he posted that photo, I got 10,000 followers in a minute. It was crazy.
Wow.
And then in 2 days, I lost 5,000 of them because they realized I knew nothing about basketball. So, so I tried to do club photography, but make it artful. So I made a bit of a name for myself. And this is while I was starting in fashion. Yeah, I like that one. That was a Jägermeister party. And some guy walked by with a lifeguard shirt. That was cool. Yeah, and that was so then I how do you do a fashion editorial? I had no clue. This is my first attempt at it. I thought it was cool, but you can see, I think, if you look, especially at the next photo, me trying to, it's very static, this is me like kind of painting by numbers, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. So you can see the like the static element that I've tried to like obviously learn to get around as I've gone further.
Right. And when you're talking about static, what we're looking at here is this idea that there's no motion in the models. Like they're almost statuesque, and everything else in the scene is also somewhat statuesque. Is that sort of what you're referring to?
Yeah, and I guess maybe that was part of my art direction, but at the same time, for me, it's a flaw. And if you saw the entire series, you'd see that through all of them. It was just, I was so green, and I had no idea what to do, and the models are like staring at me, like, what do we do? So
yeah.
It worked out.
And that's one of the things that I think we should cover today. But I don't think we'll cover it right now. I think we should cover it a little bit further on. But this idea of like directing your models and being genuine, understanding, like there's so many elements to that, in how you direct. It's not just knowing what looks good. It's also having a good relationship, putting the model at ease. It's, not in a negative way, but being authoritarian, knowing what you want, making sure that you're efficient on set, and making sure that it's a welcoming place, like all these different things that you've had to navigate. So when you consider like not just that, but all the other things that you've had to learn along the way from that very first shoot to now, what do you think were some of the big leaps in your knowledge that start to propel you forward?
Wow, that's a great question. I feel like part of that, that's a great question. Oh my God. The biggest kind of leap I had would be every time I mentored under someone. I remember there's a fantastic photographer in the city, Barrington Orr. I looked up to him so much. And he asked me to assist him on set. And I showed up, and I had already by this point spent like, I don't know, $15K in gear. And I showed up, and he had like a Rebel, like EI. And he's like, here, hold this reflector. And the stuff he made was like just magic. It blew me away. And that's when I kind of got it out of my head that it's not necessarily all about gear. It is in some cases, and we'll talk about that. But that was like a big leap for me, just to like realize it's more about the magic between you and the model. And I think the best models are actors, always. Like there are models that can act. So I think your job as a director, and what I've had to learn, is really about setting the scene, even like things down to like setting the right music, really trying to bring out the emotion of what you're trying to convey with your mood board. And I guess we'll talk about that later too. Yeah. And watching you, actually, you're a fantastic director. You make people feel incredibly at ease when you're shooting. And I've actually learned quite a bit from you.
Thank you. That's not what this is about,
Nope.
But thank you. Okay, so I think what we need to do first off is define fashion photography. Define the culture of fashion photography. To those who may be less familiar, how would you encapsulate it all for people?
I'd say fashion photography. I mean, it's a really broad, genre, but it's basically just about telling. I mean, it's fashion editorial, but it's just about making the clothes look good on the model, making them look presentable. Like if you're trying to do commercial fashion photography, it's about making the clothes look like something you'd want to buy. There's so many ways. I mean, I feel like fashion photography sometimes is almost a catch-all for a lot of different types of photography.
Mm-hmm. And when we say to make it look good, like if I'm just starting out, I mean, unless I'm a designer, unless I'm someone who looks at a lot of fashion, subscribes to magazines and all this sort of stuff, or I went to school for it, I may not know what looks good. So,
yeah. And
this is typically what I see from people just starting out shooting portrait and fashion work, is typically it's very sort of pedestrian, it's uninformed yet. Even if the subject's wearing something really interesting, they're not shooting it in a way that exemplifies the clothing. But you've somehow trained yourself to know, if a garment is made of a certain material and it's of a certain color or a certain style, it's going to look good framed in this particular way. So when you say our job is to make something look good, how does one develop the skills to know how to make clothing look good?
Yeah, that's also like, I come from Moncton, which is like people wear sweatpants all the time. Like there's not, a lot going on there. So when I came here and starting and get into fashion photography, I had, no idea. So a lot of it, a lot of it comes down to your stylist. And I'd say that is the biggest thing right away is find a good stylist. You can learn so much from them, but also more than that, really, like, I guess it's like drinking wine almost. Like, you need to like just do a lot of it, surround yourself with it so much so that you become fascinated by it and interested in it. You know, that moment when something that normally was boring becomes interesting to you. It's because you really start to see the nuances in it. So reading mags all the time, you know, watching fashion shows. And then once you get like the hook in, then it starts to make sense. There's a bunch of books out there you can read, but they're always so dry. So
I think the biggest thing that you ever showed me was the website fashioneditorials.com. And that's such a great resource because, you know, you just see all the best photographers in the world aggregated on this site with all the best campaigns. And at least what I've noticed, I still feel like I don't know a lot about fashion, but what I have noticed is that there is, and it's a cultural thing too, but there is sort of a cookie cutter formula that when you start to see even, you know, 18 different photographers from 18 different parts of the world, there's an aspect to their photography that all is synergistic, that matches. And I think that's because they all understand, you know, this idea of what looks good, you know, and like how we present fashion, and it's a very specific way we have to do it. Would you say that's true, that there's a pattern there to be recognized?
Absolutely there is. I feel like it changes all the time. I mean, as far as like the aesthetic of the way people are shooting. A lot of it comes down to light too. Like, again, that's, if I had to say your role, like technically your role as a fashion photographer, it's how to light the clothes to make it, like if you're shooting, go to like the lookbook, I think not the lookbook section, bring up like the folders. Yeah. There's basically if you're shooting like sheer fabric, what folder is it? Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll just tell the story. So basically, if you're shooting sheer fabric, you can, you know, you want to light it from the side so that you can like see through it. There's times to use flat light. A lot of times with lookbooks, you want to bring out texture. So I think there's as a fashion photographer, your purpose really, and if you're on a big shoot, like your main role is going to be like, one, to compose the shot, but two, understand how to light the clothes in a way that's going to make them look their best. So a lot of times, like when, you know, you're getting your start, and when I was getting my start, a designer would hire me to do a lookbook, and I would light it, you know, which is like flat light or butterfly light, and they'd come to me after the fact and be like, well, I can't see the texture. So you learn quickly to, you know, side light, like backlight is good. Front light is very often bad when it comes to clothing.
And actually, the photo that I have up right now from the Vulcan editorial, one that you've gotten a lot of attention for. This is kind of highlights always the issue for me with dark clothing is that dark clothing just sucks up light, and it's hard to see any detail in black or dark clothing, especially when you're exposing for white skin or very fair skin. So how do you approach lighting dark clothing with someone with fair skin? That's
really good. I mean, for me, it comes with like broad light sources. I mean, for here, like it's a cloudy day, perfect for it, right? Because your shadows are almost non-existent. And I feel like in this case, it also helps to Photoshop it so you can't really see what's going on.
Right.
Just kidding.
Well, I think this is actually, I think this is a great transition into talking about gear, because obviously where gear can play a huge role there is in the dynamic range of the camera. And so if you don't have enough, if you're exposing for your highlights, for example, and try to get those in check, that you're going to lose a little bit in your shadows with a reduced dynamic range. And so having a good camera that has enhanced dynamic range is going to help you like lift up those shadows in a way that doesn't seem super weirdo and fake. So recently, as of the last year, you've become a GFX 100 owner from Fujifilm. This is their 100 megapixel camera. Talk about a little bit about your experience going into this camera, where, you know, what it's been like for you, why it's been an important camera for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
And some of the things also like that people should know about it, both, you know, plus and minus perhaps.
Well, I definitely wouldn't have bought it if I didn't try it out first, because it is expensive. but it was absolutely worth it. So I went at one of their like demo days. I went and checked it out, took a couple of shots, and quickly realized that it would really help me in a lot of, like, in a few critical ways. One, because I shoot a lot of like natural light editorials, and often what happens, if you go to the Fuji folder there, you know, things get late in the day and you run out of light. I've never encountered a camera that can help me out like this one does.
Give me a second here.
So I'm going to show you a photo that was taken at like 50,000 ISO.
Okay, so
The last two.
okay.
On the second
So
last.
which one are we going to?
The second last one.
This one right here.
And the one after it too. Yeah, like this was at, I think, 50,000 ISO.
That's bonkers.
It's beautiful. I know. It's crazy.
I don't see like a single bit of grain in that.
Actually, this was a stop down. Go to the next one.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, you see a bit of grain in the next one. It's 50,000. I couldn't believe it. Like, it saved my ass. It totally saved my ass. And it works too, because like that's the mood I was going for. You know, we stayed out a bit longer than we wanted to, and it's just exactly what I wanted out of the light. I couldn't believe it. Like, it really, that really made a difference. The other big thing it helps with is just, especially when you're getting paid, like, you should always try to get the shot in camera.
Right.
And I really try my best to do that. But if someone's paying you to do it, you want to have everything in your favor. Go back like 3.
Okay.
You'll see an example.
So,
I won't even use this shot, but go back one more.
so I'm back in.
No, that first photo. Sorry, go right back there.
Yep.
Click on the first photo. Yeah. I didn't really like this shot, but I needed a headshot for this look.
Yep.
Click on the next one. Like, go forward one.
Yep.
That's the headshot. And I don't know if I gave you high enough res, but like, you can see his pores.
Yeah. So
I was actually kind of blown away. This was like my first editorial I did with the Fuji, and I've like, when my lease payments come up every month, I don't mind at all. It's like so worth it. This camera.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, you know, we talk about you know, this idea that sometimes on set you're just rushing, like you don't have a choice, especially in fashion where you're not just shooting one garment, you're shooting sometimes 4 to 7 looks all in a day. Yeah. And that's a lot of wardrobe changes. That's sometimes, in a case of a shoot like this, likely location changes as well. And so sometimes you just have to like shoot, and like, okay, we need to move to the next location. And you don't always get a chance to super slow down and consider your shots. And something like this with 100 megapixels, if you, like you said, like, I'm missing a headshot and I know that the editorial always needs one, this saves my ass, essentially.
Absolutely. Also for like bringing out like kind of macro shots of textures and clothings and points of movement, or like little details. Often out of a full body, I can like crop in and like, so the designer's expecting like a single shot, and I'm like, also here's 4 other shots that they can use. Right. You know what I mean?
What about also just post-production? Sorry to interrupt you there, but what about also post-production stuff? Like in terms of you know, doing all the edits with it. Does the GFX give you anything more or similar to what you've used in the past?
That was the biggest. Like in post, I was really blown away. Like your shadow and highlight recovery are insane. Enough so that recently I had to shoot something with a smaller camera from a different brand, and when I brought the photos into edit, I was like, what is going on here? like I couldn't figure out, and then I realized it was like, oh yeah, the dynamic range on the Fuji I've just gotten so used to. Go to it's in the wrong folder. Go to Lookbook. There's a really good example of like what you can do with. We're back to like the shadow recovery here. So back Lookbook. There's a picture of Liv. First one. Yeah. So this is like natural light that was in the studio at the time. This is actually a raw file, completely unedited, like no liquefying, nothing at all. This was a flash. Like there was flash going off, but it didn't go off in this photo. So it was virtually black when I brought it into Capture One. And then I was able to bring this out of it. And the mood is perfect. Like, I love it.
Wow, and this is from the GFX?
Yep.
Wow. Yep. That's crazy.
So this is like pretty much like, at the time when I looked at the back of the camera, the flash didn't go off. I'm like, obviously unrescuable. Totally rescuable. And it worked out really good. It was one of my favorite, actually.
Wow.
I love it.
That's
like a really good mood.
All right, so we got to talk. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of. We got a question actually. Hold on for a second. Let me get to our questions. We have from great handle Run CMD. What's the responsibility between the stylist and the photographer for setting the look and choosing the clothing for the editorials?
Yeah, we're definitely going to cover that later, but there's a certain amount. It's the stylist. It really should be a relationship. We'll talk about like creating your team and, you know, finding a stylist that shares your vision. And I think like at the beginning, the onus is going to be totally on the stylist because you're not going to get it. But after a while, as you build up kind of the language and understand fashion, when you're creating your mood board, you're going to know what you're going for. You're going to know what kind of clothes. Like go quickly to the mood board one. There's one recently I did for Gary Beals. And I'll show you what I mean. You don't need to give a lot of info. Mood board, Gary Beals. Last one. Yeah. Yeah, let's go down. This is like a really simple mood board. Like right there. Let's go scroll up. Very first line. Like upscale streetwear aesthetic intermixed with classics, like suits and stuff. That's all I needed to see. That's all the info I gave to the stylist. Now some photographers are great stylists themselves. I know a few that maybe can say exactly what they want for every photo. But for me, like that's enough information. If your stylist is good, they're gonna take that and they're gonna run with it. And you have to be able to trust them.
Right.
So maybe if it's a new stylist, you don't do that. But you wanna have a team of people you work with a lot so you can give them that line and they run with it, make it their own, but you know that they're gonna share your vision.
Yeah. I got another question here. I got a couple questions. And then after these questions, we're going to move on to the whole farm to table approach about, you know, doing a shoot. But let's get to these. A question from some anonymous person named Barrington Orr, who says, how do you find the correct balance between styling colors and the background for an editorial?
Oh, wow. That's a fantastic question. I know Barrington knows the answer to that one too. Yeah. For me, I mean, I have like a two-step approach. One, because I like to shoot a lot in black and white. I'll look at it in black and white just to see how I can play with the luminance of the clothes against the color of the backdrop in post. Otherwise, I mean, there's a certain amount of prep there. So you need to know what color the clothes are when you're choosing your background. Also, what you can do if it's not something you're going to be aware of, or if you don't have the money to buy a lot of seamless backdrops, you can shoot with like a backdrop, and in post, in Photoshop, you can really easily change the color. Someone showed me that one time. It was a good trick, actually. So shoot tan backdrop, and you can easily manipulate the color to complement the contrast with the clothes easily.
Cool. And one last question from Josie. Is there a specific designer or publication you'd love to work with and that you've not yet had the opportunity to do so yet, and why?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many. I mean, my all-time favorite designer is Terry Mugler. When I talked earlier about getting your hooked, it was watching some like classic Terry Mugler fashion shows. If you ever have time, look up like Phoenix Dress, Terry Mugler. There's some like epic early 90s fashion shows that just blow your mind. Really dark stuff. I mean, obviously someone like that. And I'm not there yet. You know, I will be, but not yet. So eventually I'll get to work with some of these brands that I really love, that are like, you know, like your brands that have like inspired you.
What are there's a few. 3 or 4 top publications? What are all the...
Publication-wise? Yeah. Wall Street Journal is what I'm after right now.
Really? The Wall Street Journal?
Yeah. Well, you check it out. I mean, they did this... Lachlan Bailey did a Selena Gomez editorial that was amazing. He does a lot of work for the Wall Street Journal. They're great. Vogue Italia is really easy to get into. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can, if you're a fashion photographer, go to Photo Vogue. Keep trying to... every Monday and Wednesday or whatever, keep trying to get in with your fashion photos. Eventually you'll get in. There's your Vogue logo you can put on your photo. The harder ones are like Vogue China, some of the ones that don't have easy access, and it's all about connections.
Yeah.
Harpers Bazaar is one I really want to get in. I've been in Harpers Bazaar China, but the US one is way harder to get into. There's like a bunch. There's like so many opportunities in fashion. But I would say designer-wise, Terry Mugler I would love to work with. As far as like local designers, like I got to work with Dorian Hu recently. That was amazing. I did the best lookbook of my life for her. It was fantastic. We'll show that later, actually, when we talk about lookbooks. Okay. I hope I answered the question.
You did. Amazing. I got one last question before we move on from Jesse Colin. If I only had a GFX 100, could I start in fashion photography? Is this a camera I can just start out with? Interesting. I've never considered that.
I want to know you if you can just buy a GFX 100 like that. Yeah, totally, absolutely. The GFX 100 is remarkably easy to use. The reason I really love it is I can actually carry it around. Like I'd messed with phase ones before and stuff, and like you can't, you have to be on lockdown in the studio, and the eye autofocus on the Fuji is really good. And I'm trying not to like shill for Fuji too much here, but it's actually a pretty cool camera.
Awesome.
But I mean, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. You can start with anything.
XT4. I love the XT4.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Like honestly, I think the XT4 has some of the best color science I've ever seen from any camera ever. We actually had a correction on that. That's why that question seems so outrageous. Sorry, the X100X camera. So one of the smaller little.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, exactly. That perfect camera. Perfect. In fact, I'm gonna buy what's the new one? The V, the 100 V. Yeah, I'm actually gonna buy that. Like it's the perfect walk around camera. You can do everything you need with it. My assistant, when we go on fashion shows, he brings that, and like when he has time, he'll go take just incredible photos with it. You don't need anything more, to be honest. You could shoot a campaign for whoever, pick a designer, and if you have the brains for it, if you have what it takes, then that's all you need. Yeah,
and I think that's the message we start off by saying is that so much, like the technology 100% helps you in professional applications when you got to move quick, when you need the latitude, when you need a lot of different things. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's not the thing you're holding in your hand, it's everything that's happening in front of the camera. And that takes time. And you just got to start shooting to know that looks good there, and that doesn't look good over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's your tool. It helps to have the best tool for sure.
Okay, I know I said last question, but we got one last one. Then we're going to move on because people keep bugging us. But I love that you bug us. Keep bugging us. Shane Gray, how do you push yourself to always shoot something new, to stay inspired and not burn out shooting with a busy schedule?
What a good question. I feel like the hardest thing about getting some success is then you see it with a lot of photographers that become successful, their Instagram starts to die off because you start making money, and then that's obviously that's what you want. That's one of the reasons that you're doing this is to have a career that can last. But then there's a lot of work, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of pre-production, post-production. It doesn't stop, and the next thing you know, it's been 2 months since you've done a creative. And then the next thing you know, you stop seeing things like you used to because you're not as inspired. And that's really dangerous. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, we might as well talk about it now, is just like really spending the time to find the balance. Like you have to book time off for yourself. Even if it's just to go for walks, go to the art gallery, watch movies, take the time to reset yourself and relax, or else you'll just get burned out and you'll stop producing work that people find interesting. Also, one of my first editorials is a great Toronto model. That's at U of T, actually. Go back. If anyone in Toronto wants to go shoot at a really cool spot, U of T, it's off of Harvard, go north. There's this building with a roof with 2 holes in it. There's so much you could do there.
Wow.
Check it.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
So let's talk. I'm just going to go through some of your photos here while you chat, but let's talk a little bit about farm to table approach. So you're going to do a fashion shoot. What are all the things that need to go into place from the minute you decide you're going to start to do it to execution?
Yeah, there's so much to do before, and this photo was also one of my earlier shoots. You can tell because the lighting's not so good. I love it though. I thought it had real like commercial appeal. I feel like you have to start with an idea and spend your time visualizing your shots. You need to have a mood board that every person on the team can look at and really understand what it is that you're going for. Because if they don't share your vision, and if you'll see this in your career, you'll have a client that can't really express themselves, and that always shows. You really needs to be someone that's captaining the ship that has a solid vision, and if you're that person, if you can make yourself that person, your photos will always be great.
Can I ask what you mean when you say a client can't always express, like?
Yeah, sometimes like they'll come on board and maybe they have like a kind of crazier vision or something like really interesting, but they can't express it either because they're just not used to trying to tell other people their visions. It's a lot of great artists that maybe can't get their ideas across. That I would say is something that if you can get great at through communication with the client or just for yourself and expressing your vision through mood boarding and really locking down what it is you're trying to shoot. So maybe let's talk about that in a way that makes more sense. So you have your mood board, and you want to lock down like the lighting, you want to lock down the color palette. You want to be able to tell the hairstylist and the makeup artist exactly the look they're going for, like through pictures that you found or things you've shot. You want to really tie your vision up nicely in your mood board. Once you do that, then the team, like all their imaginations will be activated. Let's go to I'm trying to find a good one. Go to the LA Men's editorial.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a good example of this is the one Dale and I did in LA. This one was great actually. So we went, you spend the time location scouting. You spend the time. The reason I like this mood board is because it actually is how it turned out. And it's because we spent the time. Go forward. Mm-hmm. Let me go down in it. Yeah, like this photo on the left, like the location, so we know where we're going to shoot, ideas for like posing, just to give people ideas of the mood. Keep going down. Yeah, this is a ridiculous picture of me trying to sit in this fence. Just so people are looking at this and they're getting an idea of what you're going for. There's like the aqueduct and like kind of crazy ideas we had to play around on it. You spend your time in pre-production, like there's that old adage, like a minute in pre-production is worth an hour on set. It's so true. Every time it's so true. It makes all the difference. So you get your mood.
And so in this, what are you trying to communicate in a mood board, and who are you communicating the mood board to?
To the team. Yeah, you want the model, the stylist, the hair, makeup artist, everyone to be on the exact same page as you. Because on the day of, right, you're under stress. So do as much work as you can when you're not under stress. Get people on board.
So for people who aren't necessarily familiar with who the team might be, let's talk about who's on that team from the get-go. Like, where does the model come from? Where does the stylist come from? Where does the hair and makeup come from? And anybody else that might be on that team.
Yes.
We talk about how they come aboard and how you communicate with them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things, and you'll hear this a lot, is find your team early. And you don't want to just find any team. I mean, you will, and then you'll gradually go through people until you want to find people that share your aesthetic, that share the idea of what they think a good image is similar to yours. You find those people and then you stick with them, because the more you work together, the more you don't have to talk. The more you know. Your mood board needs to be less in depth because they get it. Right. You know what I mean? So you want to find your hairstylist, your makeup artist. Sometimes they can do both. You can even, if you're, really want to start pushing ahead in the commercial photography, you find a producer, you find an art director. A lot of the best photographers you'll find are always exceptional producers. Look at someone like Matt Barnes. He's a fantastic producer. He can whip an idea up out of thin air and bring it into reality. And that's something, practice that. If you want to really make it and produce the shoots you want to shoot and get the best out of your ideas, you have to be a captain of the shoot. You have to be decisive, and you have to be able to like make decisions. People need to be able to look to you. If they're looking around and something's not working and no one knows what's going on, this like it's bad. So you have to know exactly what you want. You need to know how to express it. That's just practice. You just practice.
And so if I've never done a fashion photo shoot before and I want to do one, I'm like, oh, I've got this great idea. Basically what I need to do is I need to find a model, right? So maybe if I don't have access, I might ask like friends who I think might make good models, or I might actually just call a modeling agency and say, you know, I'd like to do something. Like and I guess for someone who's never done it before, you know, do they need to self-produce this, or should they find someone who's got a little bit more experience producing? And what are the calls and the emails like that have to go out?
I mean, if you're just starting, first of all, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Exactly. Find friends that want to shoot. Find a hairstylist and a makeup artist that are like similar to yourself. Or if you can get someone better, do it. Get them excited about the idea. And just, you have your idea, you're watching a movie, something kind of like inspires something, immediately go write it down, and then take the time. Find images that support that. Try to build it out. Try to build out a shot list. And just, you know, just in words even, write that down. And then just make it happen. Just go out and like shoot it like that. And you know, if it's your first time, it may not be that great, or it could be spectacular. And it's just a refining of that process.
And what is?
And eventually,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and eventually, as you know, clients start coming on board and people are paying you to do it, then you need to start bringing on other pieces of the puzzle, like art directors and producers, because once there's money involved, like, you know, there can't be an option for failure. Right. You know, it has to be. So that's why when you look in the film industry, like, you know, why there's so many people around, because the budgets are huge. So it has to be good. Yeah. So you start bringing more people on.
What are the roles that if they're separate from what the photographer does, what do someone who's just a producer do, and what does somebody who's just an art director do, and how do they interplay with what the photographer needs?
Yeah, I mean, for me, whenever I work with an art director, it's like such a joy, and there is a trade-off, is that you don't lose the ability to do things, but you are giving away a lot of the creativity. But it allows you to focus on the shots, focus on getting the shots, focus on directing the models. And if you work with a great art director, like, I guarantee you your shoots will be amazing. That's just the way it is. A great art director will just change your shoot. There's a bunch out there. Garrett Nakarado, one out of Montreal, he's like one of my faves. Everything he sees is gold. There's like less pressure on him. There's less pressure on you. So if you're shooting with him, or any great art director, you know, there's less stress. People's like, you know, less of that pinhole. I'm under stress, can't see the shot. So you have these art directors that are able to see things that you can't, and you can see things that they can't. It's more just hope I'm explaining myself correctly to you.
Yeah, and so they're almost like they're taking care of that overall. They're working in concert with you with this overall vision of how this campaign's supposed to look, in terms of like, how do we dress the background and how do we work with the stylist, so that on the day you guys have agreed on this of what the campaign is going to be and how it's going to look, and you can focus on the nuts and bolts of getting a good performance from your model, you know, and just getting well exposed and well lit shots, because the creative is someone else is looking at it. You don't have to have one eye in the viewfinder and another eye going, you know, that thing over there needs to move, you know?
Exactly. I would say the majority of the art director's work is in pre-production.
Right.
Is in it all, the art of it all come together.
Right.
And producers are just the people that make things happen.
Right. So they're running errands, they're making phone calls, they're trying to get permits, they're all the, you know, project management, as you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now you've booked your team. Presumably, to help book your team, you've also already done your lookbook or your mood board, right? Because that's probably how you got them on board. They saw it and they got excited about it. And so now what?
Location scouting. I mean, generally, you do that as you're building the mood board as well. Right. But I just don't want to skip over that, because that's a big part of it. Like, your location's good, your shoot's going to be good. And if you can go and like the best mood boards I ever see is where you have a picture of the location and then a stick figure drawn in it of exactly what the model should be doing. Yeah. And if it's a shoot that costs a lot of money, then that's what you should be doing, because then the model knows exactly what to do. You get in there, you get the shot, and then you can play around and do whatever.
Right.
Like you want to, so you do your location scouting, you get all that done, and it's like the day of. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
The shoot. Okay.
Well, let's backtrack a bit, because where does the clothing come from?
Okay, so your stylist will pull from like all their resources. To me, like everyone's so critical, but the right stylist will make or break a shoot. A lot of it has to do, like, your best stylists will just have access to more stuff as well. So if I work with a great stylist, maybe they're ordering stuff in from New York. They're from designers you can't get around here. Yeah, there's everyone's critical. Everyone's critical, and I think part of making these things work is understanding the language. I talked about that a bit earlier. So learn a little bit about makeup. Learn a little bit about hair. If you need to be able, that worked out perfectly. Yeah, exactly. So you need to be able to tell the hair and makeup what you're looking for. You don't need to know how to do it, but you need to understand what it is you're looking for, like in the hair and the makeup. You need to be able to visualize it, and you need to be able to express it. And that'll come with time, but it really helps to, while you're shooting and the makeup artist is doing makeup, just ask them what they're doing. Ask the hair, spend time talking to the members of your team, in or outside of a shoot, doesn't matter, and just understand a bit of the basics about the language, because you really want to be able to communicate these things as well as you can. Yes.
And then so now we're day of. Actually, I just want to backtrack a little bit, because I want to talk a little bit more about this. For the stylists bringing on clothing, you said they'll pull from their resources. What are their resources? So we know what we're asking of them, and we know what's a reality and what may not be a reality.
You can ask for the moon for sure, and then they'll do their best to make it, because sometimes they can go to, some sort of vintage store and pull off something better than, you could have ever hoped.
Right.
You can go to H&M yourself, and I've heard this advice a lot. Like, say you're doing a model test. I guess we'll talk about what that is later, but you can just look at a mannequin and say, okay, that looks good. Get that in the size you want, and then you return it after. So if you're a starting photographer and you don't have a stylist, that's something you can do.
Right. And so the reason that I sort of bring this up is one of the big revelations for me is when we look at all these big fashion ads, we think, not necessarily fashion ads, but just general editorials. We think all of them is some designer or some publication working with a designer, and they're picking everything, and they go, these are the clothes we want you to shoot. And I know that obviously happens sometimes, but the gross majority of editorials we see is not that. It's actually generated by the photographer and by the creative team, who are going out and picking all this clothing and then just submitting their final products to different publications or whatnot. Is that correct? Is that kind of how it plays out for the most part?
Yeah, usually just the stylist will do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're talking about doing creatives for editorial publishing, generally the stylist will pick between a single person. They'll pick between 5 and 7 or 8 looks. If it's a duo, you get 11 to 12 look, and you don't. A lot of times designers will come to you and say, hey, can we get this published? That's not really something that'll get published. That's more of an advertisement. Right. If it's a single designer. You need to just have clothes from wherever, a whole bunch of different designers to get published.
What about certain editorial articles within, say, Vogue or Harpers Bazaar, where they're actually spending a bit of time talking about the designer or whatever? This is a particular case that would be commissioned then.
One good way to get, if you're looking for access to some of the bigger magazines, is kind of that way. The designer, you shoot their lookbook, you do a good job of it, you make it creative and interesting, and then those magazines, once in a while, they'll do interesting designers from wherever, and then they'll use your photos. That's a good way to get those magazines. the designers usually have to pay to do that. It's usually a significant amount of money. But that's a good way to be able to get into magazines like that. Generally, if it's a Harpers Bazaar, they're asking you. They're like, hey, we want to do this shoot.
Right.
Or like, okay, we're going to shoot Selena Gomez. What photographer can we use?
Right.
A lot of the times most of the time that's how it works after you get to a certain level of magazine.
Right. So for people who are sort of mid-level or between mid-level and starting out, a lot of these creatives are generated from the photographer, from the team, the creative team. How do you, if you don't have a lot of resources financially, how do you get that team to come on board with a lack of resources?
You gotta hype them up. You gotta get people hyped. That's a big part of it, actually. You gotta be excited. You gotta be excited about your idea and passion, and people will always follow that.
Right.
Honestly, some of the most successful photographers I know are not even necessarily that, not that they're not good photographers, but you'll see that ability in them to be like, wow, cool idea. And then they will somehow get 20 people to come and work for them for free. I was helping my friend out on a shoot, and he had like people coming just to carry water, to go to the store and get water. They were just happy to help. Wow. And this is like one of his first shoots. And it was just, he had that ability to captain a ship and just like whip people, inspire people. You see that in most great people, the ability to just like get people to work for them.
Right.
Like, it's an art, and I think it takes time to build that, but.
Yeah. And I think that transitions well into sort of on the day. So, the biggest thing about being a leader and making sure that you get a good performance out of, your talent is making them feel comfortable. What kind of things are you doing when the minute you sort of meet your model? What's the conversation like? What are you telling them? What are you talking to them about?
Like, you're talking to them ahead of time. You show them a mood board, and then you answer their questions. Like, they'll have a bunch. And you really have to, like, often for me, most of my inspiration comes from movies. So I'll say, like, watch this movie, or like, watch this scene. A lot of this. Oh, you're so good. So this is a perfect example. This movie, Beyond the Black Rainbow, by Panos Cosmatos. It's like a fantastic. It's very visual. Doesn't really go anywhere, but it's fantastic. So I did this shoot based on this movie. I had everyone watch it. It was a really cool shoot because I got the soundtrack from the movie, and we like built the set, and it was really. Do I have any photos in there of that? Final photos? I do. I think I have one in there. So go down to the very last frame. This is also a good example of how like the mood board always will change from the final image, but scroll down to the very bottom of the mood board. See this kind of like one head down, one head up. Mm-hmm. That's like her, and that's him below. Now if you go to I think it's under creative. Yeah, under creative. Should be go down. We'll never find it. Up. Go back one. Oh, there it is. Second row, first one. Yeah. So that's what kind of came of it. It's kind of blown out, I think, on here.
Yeah, it's a little blown out when it gets to the stream. My apologies. Go to his website and see this, or the Instagram feed.
That's what comes out of it. But like, you get, everyone watches the movie. Everyone has their own idea of what that means to them. I play the music. We built a set to kind of replicate it. So if you see kind of what she's wearing, it's all like linen, and in the mood board, it's like a lot of shots of her, like in just linen against like in a cell. You just have to like create the mood. That's the whole point of a mood board. Get people on board with that so that they really understand where you're coming from. There's an art to mood boarding. There's photographers that are fantastic at it. This shoot in LA we did.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about, I just want to mention this. We're not going to take it now because it involves post-production, but we got a question from David Green. And David, I want to say, we're getting to your question, but because it's a post-production question, we're going to leave it till we start talking about post-production. So I've got it here. Don't worry, I'm not forgetting you. Let's talk really quick about what happens the rest of the day on the shoot. And then we're going to, because we have so many other things we're going to talk about. We're actually going to go a little over today. Normally this is about an hour, but I think we're going to go for about an hour and a half because we have so much to cover. You've met the model. You've given them some material ahead of time, whether it's the mood board or any additional material to kind of get them on page with what you want. But just your interpersonal relationship with them, how does that affect their performance? How do you make sure that, and this is, I don't want to get too much ahead of myself here, but this is critical as far as I can see, because a lot of times when you're just taking portrait photography, your relationship to the subject is so important, because if they're not comfortable, they're not going to open up to you. And that goes for people who are professionals who actually model for a living. If they're not feeling comfortable, and especially in this age of sort of Me Too as well, we have to be considerate of, like, we can't just go and grope them and say, oh, I got to move this piece of your thing. I can't just grab you and do this. Like, we have to be considerate, and we have to give people space to feel welcome. How are you managing directing them and making them comfortable and all of the things that go around the interpersonal thing about working with a model? What's your strategy there?
A lot of like the rapport building comes before. Hopefully, I mean, it depends. A lot of times when you're working with agencies, they don't really let you communicate with a model. So if you haven't worked with them before, the day of will be the first time you really talk to them. If you can, you want to build that before. Because on the day of, obviously, it's hectic. But there's always time. So when they're in hair and makeup, sometimes that'll be like an hour and a half. You go in and just talk to the model, and you get people pumped. Like, you want to walk in, and the makeup artist is like, doing makeup, and you just want to be like, oh my God, this is fantastic, this is amazing, and you get everyone pumped and like really excited. You just want to be a source of positivity about everything that's going on, because really the shoot should feel fun. If the shoot doesn't feel fun, then there's a problem. So you want to get just the model relaxed and excited and enjoying herself, and then when she's and then when she's still in hair and makeup, you go back and you're like setting up the shot. You go back and you check on them. You want any water, and you also want to make sure your team are on board with the same thing. Another, like, a good team, someone you work with a lot, they know when you're not going to be available, when you're going to be available. My partner Angela, she's like amazing for that. So a lot of times if it's really busy and like we're trying to get the light on set ahead of time, I don't get a chance to talk to the model. The model come down and she's already like having an amazing time, right? Because the team has like gotten her so excited.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you're totally right. If like the mood is down on set, it takes a really, really professional model to be not affected by that. Right. You need to really like create that mood for them.
And then you're now starting to shoot, cameras up, models in place. What are you aiming for in terms of coverage, in terms of the type of shots you need? I know that changes from shoot to shoot, but there must be some sort of general schematic you're aiming for. I remember once you saying, oh, like, we need to make sure that the model has accessories, because I won't get published if they're not wearing accessories. Little thing like a hat or a wrist thing or whatever, right? So you must go into these knowing I know the publishers need X, and I know I need a shot of this, or like the case where you didn't have the headshot, and a publisher needs at least one headshot. You're like, okay, my job today is to get this shot, this shot, this shot. What are those things you're looking for that are the same from shoot to shoot?
The good thing is, I mean, if you're like a little bit further in your career, you don't need to worry about that so much, because the people that are working with you are professionals, and that will happen. Right. Like, that'll happen. But if you're just starting, that will make the difference between you looking like you're just starting and you looking like you just came out of the gate, like just destroying it. Just pay attention to the details. Tell your stylist, like, really, like, bring options. Bring like, a bunch of jewelry, a bunch of hats, a bunch of options, sunglasses, whatever it is, so that on the time you can be choosing, you can make spontaneous choices. And that's another thing, just while I'm here right now, is always a lot of time, especially newer hairstylists, makeup artists, stylists, when you're shooting, they just sit down. Okay, break time. And they probably deserve it, but you keep them on set, because as things are going, like, they're going to see what's happening, and they're going to be like, oh my God, how about this? How about this idea? Or the hair is a bit off. Or the stylist is like, oh my God, I see what you're doing now. I see it. They're feeding like on the computer. They see it on the laptop. They're like, how about this? If they're not on set with you, like, there's so much opportunity that is wasted.
Right. And this might seem a bit gear-centric, but what about focal lengths? Are there focal lengths that you typically go to time and time again, like you're shooting at 25 or you're shooting at 70? Like, what are some of the classic?
Let me go back one step and just say, as far as what you need from your shoot, what you're trying to get, if it's a paid shoot, most likely you're told exactly what you need to get. Right. But if it's your if it's a creative and you're starting out, basically just try to get a killer headshot. Start with the headshot, then 3/4, like just above the knees, and a full body, and just play with it. Just try to like
why is
work,
the headshot so important? Like when I think about headshot, I think of more just beauty. You know, it's about skin tone. How much fashion can you show in a headshot?
The whole purpose of a fashion editorial is to tell a story without words. So to do that, you know, you want to be able to balance, like you have to think about the spread. You have to think about the way it's going to look, you know, page and then page. Actually, I don't have an example of that, but you want to be able to go from like a tight headshot, maybe it telling a story with the emotion, highlighting the makeup and the hair, maybe there's jewelry, and then, you know, you're playing with that on the following page with probably the same look. Bye, Dale. You just abandoned me. It's like, okay.
No, it's just because my furnace is going and I was going to try to run it and turn my furnace off, but
you can't hear it. You can't hear it.
Oh
well. Yeah. So yeah, you're telling a story. So you want to be able to have like tight shots, far away shots. Maybe you have you want to have a 2-page spread that's like a landscape that you're telling a story on, and you're thinking about like the negative space. You're thinking about like where the copy's going to go, like over on the left. So you're putting the model over on the right, or, you know, keep them out of the center because that's where the page, that's where the seam is, obviously. All this stuff will come with practice, obviously, and you'll see that. So your question, you asked me focal length. For me, it's like a very personal thing. I love to shoot like wide, low, exaggerate limbs. Got to be careful when you get to headshots because you can like warp their heads a lot, and it can be very unflattering, or it can be really, really cool. That's my style, but oftentimes if I'm shooting for a client and I start shooting really wide and low, they're like, they want the clothes to be more like, you know, center on, like, you know, natural, like, you know, right at the hip level, and that's absolutely what you want sometimes. So it's very, I mean, when it comes down to it, the client's hiring you for a reason. So you want to be shooting with how you see the vision, but you have to be able to move on that. So for me, I'm shooting anywhere from 18 to 24 usually, and then headshots 35 to 50, but I try not to get too, I mean, sometimes I'll go with like a 200 if it's like I really want to, you know, blur the background.
I'm just going here because I want to kind of give people a sense of some of this. So I'm just going to go into your campaign here. And
yeah, this is really interesting. While you're here, this is really interesting for me because this is when I just started, and I still think these are some of my favorite images. And the reason they're so good is that, again, it comes back to production, because this was Toronto Men's Fashion Week, and there was like 35 people on set. It was a huge set. So all I had to do was stand there, direct the model. Not that Jarrett needs much direction; he's fantastic. And like, you know, it's like it was so easy. And you'll find as the shoots get bigger and bigger, you think they would get harder. I find they get way easier. The hardest ones are when it's just, you know, you and a model and a hair and makeup artist, and, you know, you don't have anyone to help you, and sometimes you need like hands. This actually was a nightmare because it was like noon. I was like, are we honestly going to shoot this at noon? So it was actually really, really hard. It looks good now, but you can still tell it's like kind of like, you know, washed out. We did a lot of work to try to pop them out of the background. But, you know, sometimes I think the hair and makeup that day took a long time. So we were behind schedule. We were supposed to shoot that at like 10.
I'm just trying to get this to come up. Some don't always come up.
Good.
I'm actually going to move to...
Are you showing these photos right now?
Yeah. And
okay.
I want people to see, I love that one. I've got a question about this one here. So this one I really love, and unfortunately I just want to mention too that the photo everyone's seeing is a bit high contrast and washed out. The real photo, you should go to Nick's Instagram or his webpage to see.
I prefer to blow up people's skin, totally.
Yeah. But the photo that I'm looking at here is perfectly exposed. So, But what I love about this photo is, you know, you've got this, at least what it looks like, this sunlight coming in, but also she's got such a nice tonality on her entire skin tone. And I know this is kind of a detraction from what we're talking about here, but like, how do you get such an even light inside a vehicle, as a photographer? Because this just looks like it's almost impossible to light something so even on her face in such a small little area.
I can't remember exactly what happened for this shot because we tried two different things. One, we had the makeup artist was the assistant that day, and they were leaning in the car with a silver reflector. And then we also fired a B1 with a beauty dish. I don't know which one that is. The final shot, it's so long ago. Right. But either way.
So was that actually the strongest light coming into the window? Was that sunlight, and then you were supplementing with the B1?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It was either the B1 or a silver reflector, quite close. Right. I think it was the B1 by the look of the catch light in her eye there. Right. Also, Angela, the makeup artist, saw what was going on, and I remember her going in and applying more highlighter, and you can see it. Right. Like on her cheekbone there on the left. So
this is actually a great example, a great time to talk about post-production. And we're going to get to David's question in a second here. But I remember you once saying...
Should have found it more comfortable. Yeah. Man, this is killing me.
Get comfy, man. Sit back, chill out. I remember you saying to me that one of the things that helps you the most in the edit process in Photoshop is understanding what the makeup artists and what the hair and makeup artists are trying to achieve. And so if you understand how makeup is applied and the point of makeup, then you know what you need to do in post to either enhance that, or if something happened, just the lighting was weird, that you can kind of make up for that by going in. So what level of understanding within what happens on set with the makeup artist and then what you have to do in post, where's the interplay there?
If you're doing your own editing, it's critical. And I was lucky in that my girlfriend is a fantastic makeup artist. So she's able, maybe, and this is honestly probably a great tip, like sit down with your makeup artist when you're editing like one of the shots, because it'll probably blow your mind. Like, for instance, that photo of Ren with the snail on her face.
I'm going to find that. Probably, keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking. Like I'm editing it. I think I'm done. I'm working on the skin. And then she came over and she's like, oh my God. I was like, what? She's like, her gloss on her eyelids is like, there's like no specular highlight there. You can't even tell. So she's like, because the light was very flat, it just like the angle, it didn't quite shine like she wanted. She's like, 1 second, pushes me to the seat. And she's like, drawing in a white highlight and brought out the gloss. And that's your job. That's your job, especially when you're editing beauty. Like the next one with the snail.
Bam.
Turns out snails bite, by the way. Red was bitten by the snail. Can you zoom in on this?
Yes.
Awesome. Like on the eyelid. Yeah. It looks, there's a low res photo, so it's like kind of getting really crunchy, but you see the highlight on the eyelid.
So right there.
That wasn't there. Huh. Yeah, but that was glossy makeup. So in real life, it was there. And I was about to like let it go out, like without that. She's like, are you kidding me? she was so upset. So she went in and fixed it. And that's what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to understand like what the makeup is supposed to be doing. And honestly, I would even take like a beginner's makeup course. Like if that's something you can afford to do it. That'll make you very valuable. Hair, ask a lot of questions from your hairstylist and your makeup artist and your stylist. Like learn as much as you can. Because in post, especially with clothes, Tina Picard's another like fantastic fashion around the country. She gets it. You look at the way she shoots her clothing, she gets it. And the way she does her post on clothing, you can really tell. She just like brings out the right colors, makes sure that they're looking exactly the way they should, make sure like she dodges and burns in a way that really brings it out. Honestly, the post is critical. Like, you try to get everything in camera, but when it comes to fashion, like you got to spend the time, whether it's on skin or really like highlighting the fabrics in certain ways, or downplaying.
It's interesting. We had a conversation earlier this week with the sports photographer Mark Blinch, and he's like, in the arenas we have all these strobes that are up in the ceilings, up in the rafters, and they're going off all the time. And most people don't notice them. But if you know to look for them, you start to see them go off all the time. Like once you know that it's there, you see it. And I feel the same is true with dodge and burning when it comes to fashion and beauty photography. I'm like, oh, you can see that there's like a template. It's like they're always kind of like dodging here and then like burning there and burning there, you know, like there's a way of faces that...
There's like a T-zone here. You want to bring out the highlight on the nose and across here. You know, obviously like work with the under eye and you learn how to frequency separate. It's so monotonous. It's the worst. Editing skin, it takes so long. And like as you get further in your career and you're busy, it's like you have to find an editor at some point.
But this makes the case for getting a really good makeup artist, because if someone's really, really good, they've done 90% of your work, right? So all you're doing is like getting that one blemish or that one little hair that happened to stick down.
Absolutely. Also, one of the reasons models get paid so much, the really good ones, especially for beauty, is like they'll come in and their skin is flawless.
Right.
There's less tonal variation than anyone else. It's just luminous. It's just like those are the people that are getting hired for the big shoots, and they also require less.
I want to talk a little bit about. Oh, David, I promised David we would get to his question. Okay. For some clients, do you use a post-production house for retouching and grading? And if you do, how do you communicate your vision to them?
Oh, good. I mean, I feel like that's happens more with film than photography. For the grade, I will do one. I will do one example and say, do it like this. Or like a movie with the grade I like and do that. Generally, I think that's the best way. It's hard to communicate.
Do you make sort of, I hate to say this, but like a plug-in, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a Lightroom or a Photoshop sort of look and a look pack, and just be like, okay, I've made this, now apply it to the rest of the photos and then do the skin work as well or whatever. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, not so much. I think I used to use Lightroom a lot. Now I just, I can't handle it. Now I'm mostly in Capture One. I'll just like mess with a single grade and then hand it off to an editor and just be like, do this. But honestly, what I really like to do, I'll spend so much time shooting everything, and you spend so much time getting every member of your team so good, and then you hand it off to an editor who's just like some guy. I like to hand it off to an editor who really has his own vision too, and be like, also if you see anything, man, like even any ideas, like let me know. Let's like do something cool. And oftentimes they'll come back and they'll like, how about this? And they'll maybe even like, cropped in ways I hadn't thought of, and like, there's so much opportunity to like these things are always such a communion, such a, you get more eyes on it, the better. I feel like the best editorials are always just like so many ideas from so many people. That's really the key.
It takes a village.
I mean, you're almost like lucky if you're the type of guy that, doesn't want to hear from anyone and like knows exactly what you want. But a lot of artists aren't like that. So that's also a blessing. Just, get as much input as you can. For me personally, I have like when it's on set, I make sure I have zero ego. I want everyone to be able to be like, how about this? Because if someone's excited about something, it's probably good, especially when you know they're good at what they do.
Right. Anyway. I want to take some time now just to talk about shooting runway stuff and backstage runway stuff, because I think that's also a very strong part of your portfolio. And I know that you said that was also valuable to you coming up in the industry. And what I really love about your stuff in this particular case is a lot of it, is happening backstage, and there's a lot of fervor backstage. It's not, you don't own the space. You can't just be like, okay, I own this now, and I'm going to take this model, and you're going to be with me for 20 minutes. Like, things are happening really quick, and you've got to make some really quick decisions. And I think the stuff that you've pulled out of that is almost like journalist, like you're capturing a moment in time, but you're also doing something that's a hybrid of, high-end fashion. And it just seems like almost an improbability to me, but I think you do an incredibly great job of that. So can you talk about how you got into that, how someone can get into doing that type of photography, and what they need to know going into those shoots? What are their resources? What are the tips that you can give them to make sure that they get great shots?
So 1 second, spill my water. There we are.
Oh, that's me.
Okay.
I'm going to go to here.
Okay, let me say something about or backstage fashion photography or fashion show photography in general. I mean, I had this all laid out how I wanted to talk about it. To become successful as a fashion photographer, for me, it's definitely, you have to be talented, but also it's about making connections and shooting things that, have attention on them. If I had to say, like, there's no guarantees, but if I had to say, like, this is the way to go to, like, get yourself noticed, I would say shooting fashion shows. There's just so much potential, and I feel like not a lot of fashion photographers know that. I almost feel like I shouldn't be telling it because it's like, I feel like it should be a secret because it works so well. But honestly, you are given an opportunity that you only get, again, when you're shooting massive campaigns. Because what happens is you walk backstage and all the production is done for you. All the models are so fucking hyped. They're so excited. They look amazing. There's like, everything is done to like such a high level. The fashion is extravagant and exciting. And you get to shoot in there, and swear to God, it's a playground. It is a photographer's playground. So what I think set me apart, and you don't see so much of, there's a few photographers that do it really well for sure, but is Go Back One. Mm-hmm. That's Go Back One. That's a perfect example, is taking the time to do the things you've learned doing creatives and directing, and do that when you're backstage. It's hard because there's no time and you can get kicked out so easy. So you have to like play with that balance. But if you can bring something different to a backstage shoot, because you're right, most of it is journalistic that you see. It's just like it's called first look, backstage in their first look after they change. Sometimes you get like, sometimes you get like 10 seconds. Sometimes you don't even get a chance. Like they just say, fuck it, we're too behind schedule. So like making the effort to get like one or two images, like do the journalistic thing, just try to get coverage for your client, but get one or two images that are yours, that have your stamp on them, that took you directing and thinking about. Honestly, I think and then what happens is not only did the model tag you, the makeup artist, the makeup artist team will tag you, the hairstylist team will tag you, the designer will tag you. Sometimes even like Pier 59 will tag you. Like this is in Pier 59, the shot you're looking at. The natural light there is beautiful, and it's like one of the craziest studios in the world. And they like the photo, they'll tag you. So if you want exposure, I would say fashion shows are the best way right now. I can't think of a better way personally.
And so a couple questions. You said so you don't get kicked out. So how do you get kicked out? Like what way would you be invited in and then be like, hey, you get out of here? Like what happens behind the scene politically? How do you get in? How do you stay in?
We have to imagine these designers are paying $50,000 to $200,000 for this show and everything. And then you have some like hot shot photographer, and he walks in and he's like pulling models out of line, and then they go in the wrong spot. Right. Or climb up on this thing and something rips. Right. I've seen some like crazy stuff go down. Fortunately, never for me, but I have got kicked out specifically for like pulling models out of the exact order and then just like walking away, and they're like, "What?" And then they just like walk back into line, and then you're like, "You're fucking out of here." Like it's intense back there. Really intense. It's a battleground. To get there, like I can't really stress. I hope I'm stressing enough how I think this is like the kind of like a hack to fashion photography, is shooting like backstage fashion, and even like just shooting in the pit, because you just get so much exposure. You very rarely get paid. Some do. They make it their lifestyle, and I would never want that, just to be like constantly traveling around. You see those guys and they're like dead. Like they're in New York, then they're in Milan, then they're in Paris, and they're jet lagged and it's death, and they're just like shooting like like to get the shots. But to get there, to be able to do it, you have to build a portfolio first of backstage fashion. So you start with your local stuff. Fashion Arts Toronto got postponed, but it's soon. Toronto Fashion Week, is that still happening? I think it might be canceled actually, like for good. But there's not a lot actually in Toronto right now for fashion weeks. But there's like Startup Fashion Week. You go there, you Try to get backstage. If you can't, you go shoot runway. You volunteer. You say, can I do side pit, like on the side of the runway, which is like not where you want to be, but you just get your foot in the door. Eventually you get backstage, and you'll see really quickly it's really easy to get magical photos if you are good at all. Like if you have, especially if you have experience doing creative editorials and directing models and seeing things happen. And the benefit is you're shooting something that's not working, you back off, you just sit there, you look around, and there's like 100 amazing things. And then you're like, that's a good idea. And then you go back in. So it's like also good if you're the type of person that gets stressed easily, because you can go in, get the shot, back out. Go in, get the shot, back out. It's like, I swear to God, it's set up to gift you with amazing photos. And then everyone tags you. And I feel personally like it's like the best way to get ahead. And then eventually you have this like portfolio of like many things, and then you can go try to get in New York Fashion Week, and then you can put these like logos on it, and then you get magazines to send you, and then magazines are paying you to go. And yeah, I think, and honestly, it's just so much fun. Like it's the best.
And you mentioned tagging and stuff, and I've heard a lot of different competing theories about the value of social media for working photographers. I can think of about 2 or 3 photographers that prior to this whole debacle around the world, made a very good living shooting editorial photography, and had almost no social media presence. Like in terms of like they might have had like 2,000 followers on Instagram or whatever, because their clients are just, they trust them and they have nothing to prove. So they are like, I just get regular work and I do good work and it gets published, and I just, I don't need the social media. Whereas others, you see how valuable social media has been to them, like how that's helped them get known, that's helped them get agents, that's helped them get big publishing, opportunities. Where is your opinion in terms of the value of social media within editorial photography? I mean,
it's obviously one of the best tools. You look at someone like Gabriel Desante, he's so good at it. I don't know how he does it. He can make like
I don't know how he does it either. There's only so many hours in the day, and he squeezes 8 more hours out of the day.
He gets so many clients, and he's like, he just kills it. He's great. I personally have stopped using. I mean, I use it, but I just don't have the time. I do more stories than post photos. Like, there's so much client work, but now there's time. That's the one benefit of what's going on right now.
And actually, this is something that we talked about offline before this stream started, which is we should talk about, right now, you can't get a model right now. Yeah. You can't do a lot of these things. You can't even be together outside anywhere, or inside for that matter. So, a lot of people who might be interested in doing portrait or fashion stuff, they may have just their romantic partner or their sister or their brother or their dad. What can people do in their homes right now that can take this time to be productive and learn some skills, so when we can all go back out into the world, they're in a better place than they were before the pandemic happened?
I mean, for me, it's, obviously not a blessing, but I mean, one thing I always hated, and I was talking about this earlier, is that there's just not enough time. Like, you want to do these creative ideas. And then, like I said, there's so much work that goes into pre-production, like mood boarding. Well, now we have all this time. So I challenge like any fashion photographer, anyone wants to be a fashion photographer, with some of the stuff that you maybe learned here today, or that, just make 5 mood boards. Make 5 really well thought out mood boards. You can go location scouting by yourself. Go out, find locations, take the photos, build these things, so that when we're done, you come out of the gate with 5 amazingly executed ideas. And you can be reaching out to people now, be like, do you want to do this? Have the team set up, have everyone on board. Honestly, you can make a lot of this time. Shooting wise, not so much. Lately, I've been shooting takeout food. Let me tell you, not easy. If you're not, if you don't have like someone that lives with you that's a good model, there's like not much you can do.
Yeah. I've got one more question here from Barrington. What sort of management tools do you find resourceful to communicate with your team? Management tools?
I don't know if you know, Barrington, if you know of one, let me know. For me, it's just emails, spreadsheets. You got to make the call sheet. I guess we didn't talk about that. Thank you, Barrington. Yeah, so, You also want to create a call sheet, just simple, like when you're creating a shoot, just where you got to be, what the weather's going to be like that day, the shot list, like the time everyone needs to show up. I mean, anyone in the industry knows about call sheets, but just in case you don't, yeah, they're simple. They don't have to be exciting. And as far as management tools, I don't know.
So we're gonna start to wrap this up. We got about 10 minutes left. You sent me a document that is chock block full of amazing tips. And so I just I've got my phone here, and excuse everyone, I also am a little blind, so I'm gonna put my glasses on. So let's talk about some of these things here. Let's see. Oh, actually, we did talk a lot about these. But one thing that we haven't talked about is, I really like this here, is listen to your gut. And you say here that clients hire you for a reason. You, as an artist, we hear this time and time again, that you are hired typically because you have a distinct vision. That, if you've been doing this long enough, we can see your shot a mile away. I could be flipping through a magazine and be like, oh, I bet you this is a Merzetti shot. And sure enough, there it is, right? And I know that with a bunch of other photographers that I follow online, especially on Instagram. I'll be scrolling Instagram and I won't even see the account name. I'll just see the photo and be like, that's Lachlan Bailey. And oh, yep, for sure, right? You just see it. And so developing that trademark look is something that clients are going to be reaching out to you for, and so you have to trust that your vision is sound. How do you interpret that? How do you communicate what you think your strength is, and how do you stay on track with your vision, but also keeping in mind the client might want something, as one photographer said to me recently, he's like, my client will want my look with an asterisk. It's like, look, ish, because they have their own needs. So how do you manage those two?
Yeah, I feel like your gut always tells you what you should be doing, 100%. And if you get an idea that you don't agree with, you have to voice it. But I mean, if it's the client and they want it, you have to deliver it, but get your shot. Do what they want, but get your shot. And 9 times out of 10, that's the one they'll use. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for you, how have you developed your vision? When we looked at your first shots, I mean, we can see there's some thematic things that carry through to your modern work, but how did you develop your particular inclinations, the way you like to shoot things, the way you like to edit things? Where did that come from?
That's a good question. I feel like, I love just shooting low and wide and really trying to get the feel of power from subjects, trying to make things look a little more alien and weird. Like I said, Terry Mugler is one of my biggest inspirations fashion-wise, and that's it's weird and dark and great. Developing your style is such a hard thing to do. It comes naturally, but I think the best thing is you really have to, and that's again, if you're just shooting commercial work all the time, you'll kind of start to stagnate. You have to constantly be trying new things. And again, that's one of the points of creatives, just trying things that you haven't done before, developing your style that way.
You talked about Terry, and it made me think, I recently heard a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell talking, and he said that his early work was super iterative. He basically took his favorite authors and just wrote like his favorite authors. He said it didn't have his own voice at all with it. He goes, I read these things I wrote back then, and it doesn't sound like me. It sounds like the authors I was reading. For photography, did you find that as well, that there were just photographers you were drawn to and you were just doing your best to copy them, and it took a while to break out of that and start to experiment and come up with your own voice? How was that process for you?
Definitely. Especially when you're first starting, it always pays to try to copy the masters, from street photographers to portrait, whatever it is. And then eventually, you just, I don't know, things start to feel right. And then that's your style starting to develop. You kind of see yourself going back to certain things.
I got another question here from Anthony Judge. what advice do you have for photographers in small markets that are looking to start getting into commercial fashion work? So somebody who might be living in Moncton or Barrie, or, Barrie's actually close to Toronto, so that shouldn't count, but like, Brandon, Manitoba.
No one needs to know where you live, that's for sure. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with living in any of those places. Just, get your photos in magazines. Get your photos in, like, I'm sure most people know about Caviar, but there's a great platform called Caviar.
And can you spell that? Because I know it doesn't spell like you think it's spelled.
Kavyar. And it's kind of pay to play. After a while, you're going to try to get into magazines that maybe aren't on that platform. But as a place to start, you can, you get your editorial, you go in there, you pay $10, and then you get your editorial in a magazine, and no one knows where that was shot. So if you don't have any models in your town, then you might have to travel. But there's going to be people that are charismatic and attractive. And then also,
keep going. I got another follow-up question.
No, go ahead. That was,
if someone's having to pull from people who are professional models, I always find this super, super fascinating in how this way I see it, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. There's two types of models. There's sort of your generic, everyday male, female, I would say like prêt-à-porter model, which is sort of your ready to wear, all this sort of clothing. And then you have these models that have these crazy angular, features that put them up in high fashion. So they might be doing haute couture stuff, they might be doing wild stuff like that that's just really out there. And so our idea that a model means a very specific type of quote unquote beauty is not necessarily the case. That if I was just watching Making the Cut on Amazon, which is like this fashion designer competition show, and you realize that the same thing, the models, like they're broken into different categories as far as I can see. So if someone's trying to select someone from their hometown, what kind of things from men and women are you looking for in terms of the right body and chin and structure and all that sort of stuff that will make it look like a real fashion ad and not just like Barry at the garage over there?
I mean, you want to be able to create silhouette in your models. So, that's why thin and tall models are a thing. It's not because we think thin people look better. It's because you can get holes, between your arms and like in legs. You can create those little triangles and see the outlines of the fabric. A lot of times in smaller towns, like the agencies have already gone there and plucked out the best and taken them. But yeah, it's just about looking for people that are comfortable in front of the camera. People with good skin, people that can like make shapes. A lot of it's about charisma.
Mm-hmm. When one of the last questions here for you, when I am taking photographs of people who typically don't have their photograph taken, if there's one thing every single person says is, I don't know what to do with my hands. What do I do with my hands? So this is not something that you're going to have to deal with when you're working with a professional model, because they know what to do with their hands. But what would you say to someone starting out who's working with a non-professional model? What can people do with gestures and direct people that make it less awkward for the person in front of the camera?
If you want to be able to direct a new model or a person, maybe you're doing model tests on their new face, try modeling. Have someone shoot you. Like, maybe no one ever sees the photos. Like, God, no. But you will learn so much. Because it's like really stressful sitting there. Like, you get stressed, you don't know what to do, you don't know what you look like. And then like people are expecting things from you. So if you can do that a few times and kind of see what you need from the photographer, like that, you'll learn so much about what to tell the person to make them comfortable. And generally, it's just about making them feel comfortable, building rapport.
Are you getting them to do movement though? Like, how often are they static with like a hand like doing this versus actually like doing a move, like putting their hand through the hair, or how much is static versus movement?
It's a hard question to answer. It all depends of how technical the shoot is, but generally, like, you got to get them amped. You have to be excited. You have to be the person that's getting them excited, because they're just sitting there and you're like, good, They're just going to be like, they're not going to give you anything. You have to be, oh, my friend told me this one. This is like a tip for like a new model. If you want like some dramatic emotion, get them to like wash their hair with their eyes closed, like pretend they're washing their hair, and you'll get these like crazy dramatic, it's so funny, but it works every time. There's like a bunch of little tricks for like new models, but generally it's just, if you're excited and okay to be weird, and like, you know, the models will just like, people will respond to that. The best portrait photographers are just really good with people.
Right.
That's always the case. Yeah.
Awesome. That pretty much wraps it up. We are at our 1.5 hour mark. Nick.
That was crazy.
This is awesome.
Like
this went by like that.
Yeah, that was insane. Okay.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If you want to check Nick out, merzetti.ca, at Merzetti at IG. We'll have the links below. I'm sure, Nick, you can reach out to him. He'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have. But for now, that's our time.
Yeah, I put together a big list of things we want to talk about that we didn't want to talk about. So if you contact me, I can give you like a broken down list of how I think what you should do to be a successful fashion photographer. So go ahead and contact me.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Have a great afternoon.
See ya.